So you're thinking about buying a Mark III Seat Leon Cupra. Today I'm going to be talking about all the things you need to know, all the things I like about this car, and some of the things I don't like. So let's jump right in and we'll start this honest review. So this is my Mark III Seat Leon Cupra 280. It's featured on the channel a few times. I've done an Apple CarPlay install, and I've also done thermostat and water pump replacement and oil cooler replacement. So just some sort of how-to guides really. So yeah, this has been my pride and joy for about 1.5 years now, maybe nearly 2 years. I had a Mark II Leon FR before, the TFSI, and that was a really good car as well, and completely different to this car. And I'm going to explain why I preferred that one later on. First of all, let's start with talking about some of the things you need to know before owning one of these cars. The common problems. So these cars don't have many common problems, but some of the ones that are very, very common are quite expensive as well, unfortunately. So, as I mentioned a moment ago, you've got the issue with the water pump and thermostat. That happens on all of these engines, pretty much to every single one. In the Mark III Cupra, the Golf R, the Golf GTI, Mark 7, they all have this issue. It's the EA888 engines, and they all have the same issue with the water pump and thermostat. So you're not going to be able to get away from that. The parts are quite expensive. I did mine myself. It was about £350 for the part. You don't want to cheap out on that. And obviously labour to do it, again, is quite intensive. Really, it's a day's work for most mechanics. So it's quite a lot labour-wise as well. Other than that, these engines are pretty good. The third generation EA888 don't have any issues with timing chains particularly, or anything like that, as long as the servicing is kept up to date. So generally there aren't a whole load of common issues that you'd have to worry about, but the water pump is certainly one of them. The only other thing I would mention is on these particular Cupras, the Mark III Leon Cupra, it has the fantastic dynamic chassis control, which is really, really good. However, the shock absorbers for it do tend to leak more than your average shock absorber. There's some reports of leaking DCC shocks as early as 50,000 miles or even less. This car, when I got it, had 90 something on it, and the front shocks were both leaking, so they were completely shot. So I have since replaced all 4 DCC shocks, and the car drives fantastic now. So that is something to also look out for if you're buying one of these. Another common fault that you will know about, it won't be like the water pump where you just have a slight coolant leak or anything like that. You will know about it if this fails, because it will cause a misfire, and it's the camshaft actuator magnets. So there's 2 little magnets that control the variable cam timing, and they fail. They do fail, particularly with poor servicing. So obviously if the car is maintained very well, you'll have less of an issue, but they can fail. This car also had that issue, and I had quite a severe misfire because of it. So when they fail, you'll know about it. As you can tell from what I've just been saying, I've had my fair share of issues with this car, which have all since been rectified. And I think they're pretty much all of the common faults. There may be others, but they are some of the really, really common faults. Other issues you can get with these, sorry, I've just thought of, is the turbo. It's I believe the IS38 turbo, and they're not the strongest turbo in the world, so they can fail. But if you're buying one, again, you'll know if the turbo's failed generally. You'll get smoke from the exhaust. You'll have issues with boosting and what have you. So yeah, that is another common fault, and I believe this car has had the turbo replaced at some point. So let's get on to some of the things that I really like about this car. It is quick, seriously quick. This particular car is Stage 2 R-Tech tuned, 370 horsepower. If I just pop it into Cupra mode here, we'll give it a burst. So yeah, it is extremely quick. Even stock, these things are pretty damn fast. I'll put it back into comfort mode now. Even stock, these things are really quick. So they will beat the vast majority of things on the road because they are so light. They're only front wheel drive, so you've not got a heavy diff in the rear like you have with a Golf R or an Audi S3. They are really quite light and have a serious amount of power. They are extremely good at putting the power down to the ground, especially stock at the normal 280 or 290 or 300, depending on which Cupra version you get. Thanks to the E-diff at the front, which is basically a Haldex unit that joins the front two wheels and does some clever wizardry to make sure that the wheel with the most grip is the one getting the most power. So it is very clever. So as a super quick hot hatch, it really does the job well. So another thing that this car really has going for it is, for its age, it looks absolutely fantastic. It has a lot of styling cues and technology that a lot of cars much newer don't even have. So obviously it's got full LED lighting all around, which I think, I might be wrong in saying, but I think this was the first car in Volkswagen's lineup out of all of their brands to have full LED lighting all the way around. Could be wrong, but I think it might have been. If it wasn't, it was certainly earlier on, because yeah, not many around this age in 2014 had full LED lighting. So yes, it looks absolutely fantastic and really does not look its age at all. Obviously it's 10 years old now, which is crazy. So yeah, the styling absolutely matches the driving dynamics of the car. A lot of people say that the styling is quite reserved, and I suppose in some ways it is, compared to the amount of power it has, but I think considering the way the car drives, especially in comfort mode, which I'll get onto in a bit, it suits it, yeah. So another thing that these cars really have going for them is value for money. They are so incredibly cheap for the power and performance and the styling and technology that you get. It's almost unbelievable. For the same price, you could get a non-performance pack, Golf GTI Mark 7. Probably only get a manual one at that. A lot of people prefer DSG. So you really do get a bargain, and these are absolutely loaded with technology that you don't get with the other competitors like the Golf GTI or the Golf R or the S3 even. For the same price, you don't get the same sort of technology. I mean, this has got pretty much everything you'd want. Now that I've fitted Apple CarPlay, I couldn't really want any more. As I said earlier, full LED headlights. It has DCC, dynamic chassis control. This particular car has a panoramic roof, and it has a lot of technology that's fitted as standard that you just don't get in some of the other competitors. So it is really good value for money. So another thing about this car that's absolutely great is mods. There is so many modifications, there's so many parts out there, and there is so much information out there as well. These cars have an amazing following, really good community. There's so many forums for these cars and so much information out there. So whatever it is you need to do to this car, whether it's modifications or whether it's maintenance or repairs, there's so much information out there as well. And as I say, there's so many modifications you can do for these cars. You know, if you wanted to make this wide body Cupra R style, you could do that. And there's so much information out there on forums like sayatcupra.net. Really, really good forum, by the way. So yeah, that is an excellent thing about this car. So now I'm going to talk about some of the things that I don't like about this car. And there aren't many, really. There aren't many things that I don't like. But the things that I don't like really make it a deal breaker for me. So bear with me and I'll explain. So firstly, as I mentioned earlier, when you put this car in comfort mode, it is very, very sedate. The DCC shocks are very soft, I'm going to say. They're bordering on soft, I would say. And the gearbox goes into a really lazy, low revving mode, and even when you put your foot down, it short shifts. It changes up gear at potentially 3,000 revs, and it just doesn't seem right. So when you're in comfort mode, it really doesn't want to get up and go, I find. And I find it a bit annoying having to change the drive modes just because I feel all of a sudden I just want to do a bit of spirited driving. It is a bit of a pain having to press the button and choose it on the screen. That's just my opinion. The other thing I would say is it's not particularly engaging to drive. It really is like a video game, and not like Gran Turismo. I'd say it's more like Grand Theft Auto. It's way too easy to go quick in this car, and because it's DSG, that just makes it so much easier to go way too quick. And it really isn't particularly engaging. There's not a whole lot of feedback from the steering wheel. There's no feedback from gear changes because obviously it's DSG. I would personally prefer manual, which I know is very, very unusual, but I've realised that I would prefer a manual because of that. And yeah, it's just not particularly enamoring because of that. I find that you're not really a driver. You're just merely participating in the driving experience, if that makes any sense at all. It's just way too easy to drive, essentially. I've come from a Mark II Leon FR, which was a much more engaging drive. The suspension was quite firm. It was really quite raw compared to this car. This is so refined and so easy to drive. It kind of takes away from the point of a hot hatch. A lot of hot hatches like the Renault Sport Clio or the Renault Sport Megane, cars like those are really raw driving experiences, and they're not for everybody. Not a lot of people like those kind of things, and maybe people are looking for more of a fast luxury hot hatch. But that's not what I thought this car would be, and it is. So I'm not totally enamoured with it because of that. Now, if it was a manual, maybe it would have been different. But honestly, it hasn't totally won me over in the time that I've owned it. And for that reason, it is for sale. So if anybody's in the market for one of these, they are fantastic cars, don't get me wrong, they just don't suit what I want. Then let me know, because it is for sale. It'll be going on Auto Trader very soon. Get yourself a fantastic car. So, going back to the drive selection, what I will say is when you do put this in Cupra mode or Sport mode, it really does firm up quite a lot. The gearbox goes from very sedate to super aggressive, and the DCC shocks get noticeably firmer. So if you can be bothered to switch between the drive modes, which I can't really, then yeah, this is absolutely fantastic. And it really is. It's not, again, it's still not fully engaging, and I don't really like, again, it's to do with the DSG, how I don't have full control of the gearbox. I've had it where, you know, I want it to really rev out, and for some reason it just changes up gear for me, and I don't really know why it does that. But if you're just happy to put it in drive and just put your foot down and let it do the work for you, then this car is absolutely fantastic, and it really is like a video game. If you want to play a video game in real life and do incredible speeds and drive like it's a go-kart, then this will do that in Cupra mode. Only on a track though, not on public roads. So this is the end of the video, guys. If you're considering buying a Cupra, then my advice is to go for it. However, if you're wondering whether you should go for a DSG or a manual, my advice is to consider going for the manual. I wish I'd done that when I bought this one, to be honest. They're fantastic cars, so don't hesitate in getting one. This one is going up for sale, but that doesn't mean it's not a great car. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video. Bye.